Hey YouTube, what's up? Thanks for tuning in. In this video I will compare 3 budget crawler ESCs, programmable crawler ESCs 80 amp, which do come with program cards. The super mega popular Hobbywing Quicrun 1080 WP 1080 crawler ESC, I guess the most popular crawler ESC on our planet. Super cheap for what it's capable of, around even below 40 US dollar, even in Europe in local shops, sometimes below 40 euros. An awesome ESC for the price, and the rather new Carisma ARC-2 brushed ESC. It's not available in European Union so far, I guess. I got it from Switzerland. I don't know why that's not so popular. The price is around the price of the Hobbywing 1080. And the third ESC does not come in a box. That's this new, super cheap, somewhere in the 20s, WP 80 amp waterproof crawler ESC, which also comes with a program card, a new program card. It was initially announced as Hobbywing 1080, and yeah, there were a lot of complaints. Of course, this is not a Hobbywing ESC. However, WP brushed ESC. Nobody knows the brand of this ESC. Simply comes in a plastic bag without any instructions. Hobbywing comes in this nice box. I don't know how many of those I do have. Nicely packed with program card. I also don't know how many of those cards I do already have. An option without card would be nice, because nobody needs 5, 6, 7, 10 of those program cards. And the Carisma ESC, also nicely packed. And its program card is much smaller than the other two program cards. Size-wise, all of them are not really large. The smallest one seems to be this new Cheapo from China. The Hobbywing, at least the new ones, I guess, come with XT60 plugs. I guess years ago I also received one with T plugs, and I guess without motor plugs. I soldered those goldies to the wires. The Carisma ESC also comes with XT. Does it come with XT60, or did I already solder those to the... And with those super cheap motor plugs, we know from Tamiya it is waterproof, but the super tiny switch doesn't seem to be very waterproof. And the China Cheapo does come with a T-plug, and also with those super cheap motor plugs. I will put goldies and XT60 to all of those ESCs now, and I will test it. I will do some simple indoor tests, drag brake tests with different settings and low speed responsibility with this chassis. That's a really Freeman kit. That's very similar, but not a copy of the SCX-10-2, super popular here in Europe, with a Holmes Hobbies Trailmaster Sport 550 12T motor and some weights. So the whole chassis does have 3.4 kilograms. What's about an average scale crawler, and I will use for the low speed tests my FlySky Noble receiver. And furthermore, I will test the BECs of those ESCs, and therefore I will use my setup for servo testing. Here's the SPT 35 kilogram servo. If you saw my servo tests, that's the servo that draws most amps, and we will see how capable the BECs of those ESCs are. But first let's check their specifications. So let's check the specifications of those three ESCs. They are very similar. All can work with 2 and 3S LiPos and 5 to 9 cells NEMH batteries. Constant current 80 amps in the Hobbywing 1080 and the China Cheapo, and 60 amps in the Carisma ESC, and peak current up to 400 amps in the Hobbywing and the China ESC, and up to 750 amps in the Carisma ESC. The Hobbywing 1080 does come with 14 gauge wires, and the Carisma and the China ESCs do have 16 gauge wires, shouldn't be a problem at all. And rather interesting for us, the BEC, the Hobbywing 1080 and the Carisma do have a switchable BSC with 6 volts and 7.4 volts, so high voltage capable. And the China ESC does only have a BEC with 5.8 volts. All BECs are rated up to 3 amps and the Hobbywing up to 6 amps peak. But I did already find that normally BECs are much stronger than their specifications say. I did make a video about this. And I do also think that the specifications of the China Cheapo are simply copied in some parts from the Hobbywing 1080. So 8400 amps. Also the weight, I didn't write it down here, 58.5 gram as in the Hobbywing 1080. And the specifications say it comes with 14 gauge wires, but I checked the wires, they are labeled with 16 gauge. So don't trust the factory specifications of the China Cheapo. PWMs, frequency setting options of the ESCs, that's pulse width modulation frequencies. All three ESCs do have the options of 1, 2, 4, 8 and 16 kHz, and the Carisma ESC does additionally have the option of 32 kHz. The PWM frequency settings say how often the ESC sends the power to the motor. That's always a on-off, and the frequency says how often per time it sends the power to the brushed motor. Higher frequencies mean that the switches of the ESCs have to shut on, off more often, of course, and this can cause heat problems. Not must, but can. And lower frequencies can cause noticeable rippling of the motor, so on, off. Normally you would say don't go below 4 maybe, but that's always a matter of testing and motors, so you have to choose what you want. However, the sometimes very annoying high frequency sound of the motors or ESCs of the ESCs, that's caused by the frequency settings. So the higher you go, the less you will probably hear, and 16 kHz, that's such a interesting frequency because that's around the maximum of adult people can hear. Younger people, children, can hear up to 20 kHz mostly, but elder people hear higher frequencies less well or don't hear them anymore at all. And so if you are really annoyed by the cheeping, whimpering sound, whining of your ESCs and you have the option to change the settings, you should go higher. 16 kHz, if your buddy says he can hear it and you do not hear it, that's possible. So that's depending on your hearing abilities, and children probably always will hear 16 kHz. 32 kHz, as in the Carisma, no human will hear anymore. But you have to check if high frequencies will cause heat problems. Programming is easy with all those program boxes. The Hobbywing 1080 is the only of those ESCs which does have a separate program port for the program cable, which has to be connected to the program box. And the Carisma ESC and the China Cheapo use the normal wire that goes to the receiver for programming. Everyone knows how it works in the Hobbywing ESC. All the 15 different points are listed on the program card and even readable, and you have one button for selecting the 15 different values, and the second button, value 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, that's forward brake, forward reverse brake, and forward reverse. So we want 3 forward reverse, that's the crawler mode. Okay, now it's programmed. And now go to the next value. In the Carisma ESC, the program card also works nicely, but the values or the different points are not listed on the ESC. You can find them here on the box, and you have one button for item and (16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21 items), and increase and decrease the value, and save. Done. That's nice. Confirms. And then go to the next item. 2, 3, 4. And the China Cheapo. The program card also works nicely. You see point 1, value 3, but the problem in this is all the points are listed on the program card on the back side, but it's written extremely small and kind of washed out, so that's really hard to read. But you have the one button for item, what's named I10 here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. And maybe you saw this now. There are 19 different items, but I go now to, I'm now on item or point 10, and now I go to 11, and you see 2 lights are lit up now. So 11.11 is 12, 12 is 13, and number 19, the last value you can select and adjust, is 20. Don't know why that's the fact. There are no manuals, and then you can choose the value and OK, and confirms with the blinking, and you have a reset button which will probably set it to factory settings. However, to read this list is not that easy. So I show you now the different values you can adjust with the different ESCs, and you can pause the video to check it. First, the Hobbywing 1080. The different points are on this sticker here on the program card, 15 different points. And the Carisma ESC, 21 different points. And finally the China ESC, and that's really hard to read, at least for me. And I will adjust now all BSC voltages of the Hobbywing and of the Carisma to 6 volts. The China ESC doesn't have any possibility to change the voltage of the BSC. And then let's check the voltage and what the multimeter says, if 6 volts or 5.8 volts are correct. And now let's check the BSC of the Hobbywing 1080, programmed to 6 volts and 6.02 volts, so very nice. Now let's test the BSC of the Carisma. ESC also set to 6 volts, 6.14 volts, so a little bit higher. And the BSC of the super cheap China ESC, .8 volts it's labeled, and 5.9 volts, so okay. And let's test the Hobbywing on high voltage. So let's program the Hobbywing to 7.4 volts and check the BSC voltage again and switch on again. So the high voltage BSC 7.4 volts delivers 7.2 volts only. And let's also test the Carisma ESC. 0.4 is BSC voltage, 0.1, 2, 3, 4. 1 is 6 volt, 2 is 7.4 volt. Save, done. And now let's check the voltage. If it is 7.4 volts, nearly 7.5 volts, so the Carisma BSC delivers higher voltage than the Hobbywing 1080 BSC. Now let's check the power of the BSCs. That's the Hobbywing 1080, 6 volts, 2S battery. Here's a scale, kilogram centimeter, my strong servo. Here are 2 LEDs. You will see them flickering if the power is not enough anymore. And here you can see the amp draw. So let's start. Lights a little bit flickering. Nearly 4 amps. And now the Carisma ESC, also 6 volt BSC. A little bit, the lights are flickering. And now the cheap China ESC. Lights are not flickering at all. Wow. Not at all. Wow, I did not expect this. So the result of this test was a little bit of a surprise for me. I never would have expected this. In the Hobbywing ESC, 6 volt BSC, and in the Carisma ESC, 6 volt BSC, the LEDs flickered a little bit. And in the super cheap China ESC, there was no flickering at all. So light LEDs were bright all the time, and even the results of the torque tests, okay, that's not really significant, but it showed the best results too, with 28 kilograms centimeter, about 390 ounces inches, and it also delivered more than 4 amp, so the servo pulled more than 4 amp only with a super cheap China. Who would have guessed this? So now let's check this annoying PWM frequency, this whining of the ESC at low frequencies at 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, and in the Carisma also at 32 kilohertz. So let's start with the Hobbywing 1080. I go to 13, value 1 kilohertz.
Signal lost.
And one kilohertz. Extremely annoying. Hobbywing 1080, 2 kilohertz. Even higher pitched. Still annoying. 4 kilohertz. Still annoying, higher pitched. And now let's go to 4, that's 8 kilohertz, Hobbywing 1080. And you can, I can still hear it. Don't know if you can hear it on camera. Very high pitched, 8 kilohertz. And now let's go to 5, 16 kilohertz, what adult people probably won't really hear anymore. I can't really hear anything anymore. That's why I love 16 kilohertz settings in the ESC. So let's check the Carisma ESC now. PWM frequency is number 16 in the Carisma ESC, and we go to 1, that's 1 kilohertz. You can clearly hear this annoying noise. Number 2, 2 kilohertz. Still annoying noise. Number 3, 4 kilohertz in the Carisma. Still noticeable. Number 4, 8 kilohertz in the Carisma. Very slightly. Number 5, 16 kilohertz in the Carisma. I can't hear anything anymore. And now let's go to number 6, 32 kilohertz, what obviously I will not hear anymore. And now to the China Cheapo, number 19, the very last point is the PWM frequency, and value 5 is 1 kilohertz, value 1 is 16 kilohertz, 2 8 kilohertz, 3 4 kilohertz, 4 2, and 5 1 kilohertz. Let's set it to 1 kilohertz now. Okay. One kilohertz, China Cheapo. Strange thing, I don't hear anything. Let's check again. One kilohertz should be point number 5. Maybe they've mixed it up. This seemed to be, for me, 16 kilohertz. Let's go to 19 again. And value 5 should be 1 kilohertz, but probably value 1 is 1 kilohertz, as it is in the Hobbywing 1080. So let's go to 1. Okay. And check. Yes, probably they have made the labeling of the program card wrong. 1 is 1 kilohertz. Extremely annoying. So probably 2 is 2 kilohertz and so on, as in the other ESCs. So let's go to value 2. Okay. And probably that's 2 kilohertz and not 8 as the labeling of the program card wants to tell us. Annoying noise, so probably 2 kilohertz. Then 0.3 probably is 4 kilohertz. Four kilohertz. Still whining. Value number 4, 8 kilohertz. I can hear it. Don't know if you can hear it on camera. Very high pitched sound. Now. Then let's go back to value 5, what should be 16 kilohertz and not 1 kilohertz. And now for me it's absolutely silent, no whining anymore. No difference to the 16 kHz settings of the Hobbywing and the Carisma ESC PWM settings work also in the China Cheapo. And since I want to compare different settings in the ESCs and also want to compare the ESCs, I had to write down all the options you have. That was impossible only with the writings on the cards or on the box. Here you see all the options the Hobbywing Quicrun 1080 has, and marked are the factory settings. And I changed 2 points. I changed 0.6 maximum reverse force to 100%, and I changed the PWM frequency, as already mentioned, to 16 kHz in all ESCs. And those are the points that I think could be interesting for us or for crawler drivers. So initial start force, drag brake rate, and start mode punch, and as already mentioned, PWM frequency in the Hobbywing 1080. Now the same in the Carisma ARC-2, 21 points, and the factory settings again marked. And here you see what I changed. I changed 0.2 to LiPo battery, maximum reverse power to 100%, and PWM frequency to 16 kHz. And those are the points that I think are interesting for rock crawlers or scaled crawlers. The Carisma ARC-2 has a point here, number 5, descent control. So this ESC said should have a descent control. I don't know how this works. You can switch this option on and off, and I will compare with 100% drag brake the behavior of the crawler with and without descent control. Then initial start force and start punch, points 6 and 7. In the Carisma, point 14 is drag brake, and point 16 PWM frequency, 16 kHz. And now the same for the cheap China ESC WP 80 amp. The factory settings again marked in pink, and what you see red here are some faults, mistakes, errors I found on the description of the program card. In neutral point range, this was only a mistake in writing, and 14 battery savings, I don't know what this means, but the only really important point is point 19, the PWM frequency settings, and those are labeled wrong. Number 1 is 1 kHz and not 16 as the program card is labeled, and number 5 is the highest PWM frequency, 16 kHz. So that's written in wrong order on the program card. Here the points I changed to crawler mode, and reverse force and drag brake force to the highest level, and 16 kHz PWM frequency. And here are the points I think that are of interest when using this ESC in a scale crawler. So the startup mode, and of course drag brake and drag brake acceleration maybe, and reverse maximum throttle stroke and forward maximum throttle stroke maybe. I do not really know what this is, and I also didn't test it later. And here now those interesting points of all 3 ESCs on one page. The Hobbywing Quicrun 1080 in orange, the Carisma ARC-2 in yellow, and the China Cheapo in green. You see the big yellow part on the top, descent control in the Carisma, on off. I will test this ESC with and without descent control. And then PWM frequency, as already mentioned, 16 kHz. I like silent ESCs. Drag brake rate in the Hobbywing, that's called drag brake force and drag brake acceleration, probably in the China Cheapo, and the Carisma only does have a point drag brake. And start mode punch and initial start force in the Hobbywing, start punch, initial start force in the Carisma, and startup mode in the cheap China ESC. I think those are the corresponding points. 16 kHz, I set all ESCs to 16 kHz PWM. I will compare the drag brake using different values as seen here in the Hobbywing with 0, 60 and 100%, the same in the Carisma, and in the China Cheapo grade 1, grade 5 and grade 10. And in the Hobbywing and the China Cheapo I also will test different settings of drag brake rate or drag brake acceleration, as you can see here. Level 1, 5 and 9 in the Hobbywing, and grade 1, 5 and 10 in the China Cheapo. And I will test different settings of startup mode, start mode, punch it's called, in the Hobbywing level 1, level 5, level 9, in the Carisma start punch off, medium and strongest, and in the China Cheapo it's called startup mode, and I will test grade 2, grade 5 and grade 10. Grade 1 is marked red here. That's because the motor didn't start. After setting the startup mode to grade 1, the Holmes Hobbies 555 slot didn't show any sign of working, and after I changed to grade 2 it worked normally. So grade 1 will not work, at least with the Holmes motor. So those are the points I will compare, and now let's see how those ESCs did with different settings. I made all those drive tests on an incline of about 46 degrees, testing start mode punch on the Quicrun, level 1, lowest level, still quite a bit of punch, and starting on the incline, nice and smooth. And then I tested how many clicks with the trim of the throttle it will need to start. And 66 clicks on level 1
64
to start, and stopped at 64. Level 5 with the Hobbywing, maybe a little bit more punch, but not a real difference on starting on the incline. And trim test needed nearly the same number of clicks, 68 to start, and
68, 70,
stopped at 62.
62.
And the highest level seems to have a bit more punch, really, but still it's possible to start smoothly if you want on the incline, on the hill. And again it needed 68 clicks to start. And stopped at 62.
62.
And the Carisma start punch off, still quite a lot of start punch. climbs nicely, starting as easily possible, smoothly, and also with start punch off, quite a lot of punch. Started at 58 with start punch off on the trim click test.
58.
And stopped at 48.
48.
And on level 5, medium, maybe more punch, I even couldn't really feel it. Climbing smoothly, nicely, starting smoothly, easily possible, but also with a little bit of punch if you want. And started at 52 clicks.
52.
And stopped at 48.
48.
And at the strongest start punch, strongest position, maybe a little bit more of punch. Still nice climb, starting nicely possible on the incline. Honestly, didn't feel a lot of difference, and started at 58. And stopped at 50.
50.
And the China Cheapo at the lowest startup mode, grade 2. Still quite a bit of punch, climbing super smoothly possible, starting and with this ESC the truck did already start at 32.
32?
So much faster than with the other ESCs, and stopped with 30. Now middle position, start mode grade 5 in the China Cheapo. Maybe more punch, don't know. And don't really feel a difference also in climbing. It's smooth, nicely. Quite okay. And on grade 5, that truck also started at 32.
32.
And again stopped at 30.
30.
And on the highest position, startup mode grade 10. Quite a lot of punch. Climbing, starting on the incline, smooth. So I expected more difference in all ESCs between those different grades, stages. And on grade 10, the truck only started at 44 clicks. So later than in the other grades, grade 2 and grade 5, and it stopped at 34.
34.
And drag brake tests, Hobbywing Quicrun 1080 with drag brake on 0%, so it's nicely rolling, no drag brake at all. And medium 60%, there's already drag brake, but not very strong. and on 100% full drag brake, hard drag brake. Truck is still rolling. That's the 5-slot 550 motor. Maybe you've seen my motor test videos. The 5-slot motors do have much weaker drag brake than 3-slot motors. And the Carisma ARC-2, descent control off and drag brake 0%, but there seems to be still full drag brake. When rolling down, not full, but still drag brake, even if it's 0%. And with descent control on, I can't really see any difference to descent control off. And I thought maybe that's when going down hills it will help you, and therefore I turn the truck now, reverse, and now forward. Maybe it will help you when going down, but honestly can't really feel anything. And now descent control off and drag brake 60%. Can't see a lot of difference to 0%, that's really strange. And now reverse and going down. And now descent control, drag brake 60%. Maybe one would have to drive the truck longer to feel the descent control. Or maybe that's only in motors with harder drag brake, 3-slot motors, they help. So for me no difference to descent control off, and even nearly no difference to drag brake 0%. Now that's drag brake 100% in the Carisma ESC. Still rolling down slowly. Maybe drag brake is harder than 0%, but a huge difference to the Hobbywing ESC, where drag brake 0% was only a roller. Now reverse with descent control off. Not a huge feature. And now descent control on, drag brake 100% in the Carisma. Slowly rolling down. And in reverse direction. At least in those short tests I couldn't really feel a difference. And now the China Cheapo, lowest drag brake grade 1, and it's a roller as in the Hobbywing, so 0 drag brake grade 5, medium. There's a little bit of drag brake, but still rolling down quite fast. And drag brake 100% or grade 10 in the China Cheapo, it abruptly stops. And going down super slow. So quite nice, really works well. Far better than the Carisma. And in the Hobbywing Quicrun 1080 I did also test different stages of drag brake rate at drag brake 100%. This is level 1, the lowest level. Medium level 5 seems to be a little bit harder than level 1. And in the highest level, level 9, so you see brake is harder than on level 1 or with level 1. So this seems to work in the Hobbywing 1080. And in the China Cheapo I tested the drag brake acceleration in 3 steps. Here grade 1 with highest drag brake level, grade 10. Medium, grade 5 drag brake acceleration. Maybe the brake's a little bit harder. Hard to say. And highest level, grade 10 drag brake acceleration. So brake probably is a little bit harder than in the other levels, but it's not that obvious, or it's not as obvious as it was in the Hobbywing 1080. However, seems to work. But not a huge feature, I guess.
So all those driving tests were a little bit disappointing for me. I hoped to get more exciting results. No, did not get them. There is no clear winner. There's a clear loser, in my opinion, the Carisma. The descent control seemed not to have any effect on the driving behavior. Maybe it would have effect if I wouldn't have used the 5-slot 550 motor, but one of those 3-slot motors, which do have a far stronger drag brake, I don't know. But what was even more disappointing, different settings in the drag brake didn't seem to have a big effect or even no effect. And drag brake off was not off. It was off in the China Cheapo, in the Hobbywing. Those trim tests I wouldn't take for too serious. The China Cheapo won. The car started much earlier than in the others, but maybe you can change this, for example, in the Hobbywing by changing the neutral range settings. So I wouldn't take this for too important. All of them were able to give really nice slow crawling behavior, and all of them had quite a lot of punch, and the fine-tuning settings in the Hobbywing 1080 and also in the Cheapo maybe even had an effect on the drag brake power, on the drag brake punch. There's only one clear winner in all these tests I made now, and that was the BEC test, and the China Cheapo, no doubt, it won. But I will not recommend this, of course not. That's bench tests. We will have to see how this ESC will hold up in the field, if it gets wet, if it's really waterproof, and durability, so no recommendation at all. If you want to try a Cheapo, try it, but I will not recommend it. Of course I recommend the Hobbywing 1080. There are thousands and thousands out there, and nearly everyone loves this ESC. And in the Carisma, I don't know what I like. I like the black color, I like the black wires. You see, I even try to use wire mesh to darken my colored wires in my trucks. I don't like these striking colors, but super strange tiny switch, and does not work. Programming was easiest with the Carisma, so you do not have the settings on the card, but this card was more convenient to use than the card of the Hobbywing 1080, even if this works fine, and of course more than the card of the China Cheapo, which was quite nasty to use, but still works if you do not have to read this. Anyway, I hope this was at least a little bit of interest for you. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video. I'll be back.